You think Michio Kaku is our Daisuke Matsuzaka? You're in favor of the no DH type of ruling, or you like the fact?
Yes, I am. Designated hitter is one of the stupidest ideas I've ever heard of.
Wow.
Let the pitcher hit. God damn it! It's a baseball game.
Take me out to the ball game. Take me out with the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jacks. I don't care if I never get back. Let me root for the home team. If they don't win, it's a shame. For it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, Binnall of America Audio with your host, Tim Binnall.
Hello there, my friends. This is Tim Binnall of BinnallofAmerica.com with another edition of Binnall of America Audio Season 2. It is March 31st, 2007, and this week we have for you a very, very special edition of Binnall of America Audio. I think I say that every week, but this week it is very special. It is the Binnall of America Audio Baseball Special, and this is sort of a concept that I was tinkering with over the month of March and really sort of threw it all together here at the end of the month this past week. I recalled that we had discussed baseball and esoterica with some of our guests in the past. I knew that many of our guests on the program are baseball fans. We only really got to a fraction of them this week. And, of course, I am a big baseball fan, and I'm excited about the beginning of baseball season this coming week. So we want to wrap that all together. Esoterica, baseball, Binnall of America Audio. Put them together, see what comes out. Experimental esoteric radio. That's what you're going to hear this week on the program. And having listened to the interviews now, post-recording them, I think it's a pretty interesting mix. I think we really hit on a lot of interesting topics within esoterica, somehow via using baseball as the springboard. I'll be interested to hear what the audience thinks of this. If you're not a baseball fan, don't give up. Don't shut off the episode. Give it a shot. You know you want to hear Stan Friedman talking about steroids. You know you want to hear Loren Coleman imploring Major League Baseball to do something about potential suicide clusters. Those two segments are just from previous Binnall of America Audio interviews. Those are the clips. We're throwing them in for fun. Then we've got 3 fresh interviews with former BOA Audio guests. They're going to talk baseball and esoterica with us. First, Adam Gorightly. He was on the program last December. He's back to talk about Doc Ellis and his LSD-infused no-hitter from the 1970s. And Adam's going to talk about being a Giants fan and Barry Bonds and steroids, the Dodgers and MK Ultra. He's going to talk about that. It's a really wild mix of esoterica and baseball with Adam Gorightly, plus an update on what he's been up to. From there, Paul Kimball stops by. He's going to talk about his blog post from 2 years ago in the afterglow of the Red Sox championship, predicting that ufology would someday have their Red Sox moment. We're going to catch up with Paul now and find out 2 years later what he thinks of that post, what he was trying to say, and does he still stand by that? Is there still going to be a Red Sox moment for ufology? Then we're going to find out about why Paul likes old school baseball better than new school. He practically makes me cry at one point. It's hilarious. And we're going to find out what he's been up to since he was on the program last. Wrapping it all up, we reunite with Greg Bishop, one of the very first guests on Binnall of America Audio. He's back. We're going to cover a wide array of stuff. Greg's going to have a rebuttal to the Red Sox moment ufology discussion that Kimball and I had earlier. We're going to talk about the X-Files Roswell baseball episode. That segues into discussion on why there's no black people in ufology, which is really a fascinating topic that has yet to come up on the program. Then we're going to find out about him being a Dodgers fan, the Dodgers-Giants rivalry, how that carries over to the Gorightly-Bishop rivalry in hilarious ways, and he'll respond to Adam's MK Ultra Dodgers story. That sort of encompasses a lot of what's going on here with these 3 update interviews. It's very lighthearted. It's more like a conversation and less like an interview. For those of you who are unfamiliar with all of these guests, go to binnallofamerica.com. Go to the audio archives. Each of the returning guests has done 2-week shots on the program previously, so you're talking 3 hours of material right there with Bishop, Gorightly, and Kimball. Loren Coleman stopped by for an hour and 46 minutes. BOA Audio Season 1. Stan Friedman, of course, is the star of his own Christmas special here on Binnall of America Audio. The Christmas specials, go back to the archives. You'll be able to find them. So if you're unfamiliar with these folks, there's a wealth of material there. I can't read all those bios. You just want to get to the episode already, I bet. We're not going to do the bios. You know who they are by going to those interviews. We already do the bios there. Check those out for more information on all these great guests. We're going to rock it out first with Stan Friedman talking about steroids in baseball from the Binnall of America Audio X-Conference sessions. Our first segment here on the Binnall of America Audio Baseball Special.
You're an old-school baseball fan. That's what you told me yesterday. So what do you think of this steroid flap? We'll move away from ufology and into something that probably people don't get a chance to hear from you, and that's a sports-related question, but that's what I'm interested in hearing your opinion of. So what do you think of the steroid controversy in baseball?
I'm frankly rather disheartened. Growing up as a kid in New Jersey, where you had three major league teams within earshot, so to speak, you were either a Dodger, Giant, or Yankee fan. I was a Dodger fan, and I was really inspired by, for example, Jackie Robinson. The guy's guts, his daring, his challenging of pitchers, all the rest of it. It was all based on native ability and then some. He had an overabundance, if you will. And frankly, it gave me hope as a young Jewish kid. If a black guy can put up with what he had to put up with that first couple of years and still succeed so well and be so exciting, then there's hope for the rest of us. But I grew up respecting native talent. And the chemical enhancement of capabilities bothers me, frankly. I don't much approve of that. I think that that's what makes sports exciting, is A, that you can aspire to do what your heroes do. And, of course, one thing that was different then, the same guys played for a team for a long time, so you could develop loyalties, which was important. And there were human relations things that were important. They weren't getting paid these horribly large salaries, which I think is nuts. When a Southerner, Pee Wee Reese, can play shortstop to Jackie's second base act, that's an inspiration, too. That people can overcome their innate prejudices and so forth. Now, if you throw chemistry into the act, that fouls up everything. And I'm sure that some people are more enhanced than others, and the beneficial effects are greater with some people than with others. But I love to watch baseball. I used to take my kids when the Dodgers moved to California. I moved out there, too, not because of them. But take the kids to Dodger Stadium. It didn't cost me an arm and a leg, and it was fun. It was good. And when I look at some of these guys now who don't realize they've got fans looking up to them, and young fans especially, and where it's who can make the most money and take the most pills, so to speak, at some risk to their own bodies, incidentally, which is another bad thing. Sports is tough enough as it is, without throwing in the pain from the chemicals at a later date. I'm dismayed. I'm not in approval of enhancement. And I think that baseball has let this go on for much too long. It hasn't done the disciplining that needs to be done. And, we were living in Canada when Ben Johnson won the 100 meters at the Olympics and then lost it. It was a horrible disappointment to an awful lot of people. And, the guy worked awfully hard. He was a good runner. It's a shame he had to go that extra step to be the best. And so, in ufology, we have people who talk much bigger than they should. It's like they've chemically enhanced their presentations, and I don't much approve of that either. So I'm fairly consistent. I like loyalty. I like talent. I like people who work their butts off to get where they are. And I suppose it's a throwback. I worked my way through college. I had scholarships, but I worked as a busboy in the Catskills 2 summers. I waited table. I was a union waiter in Chicago for 3 years at a good restaurant in the south side of Chicago. I earned my way, in other words. And I tend to look upon that as the way things should be. Yeah, it's nice if you got a rich uncle. But, U.S. Aircraft once did a study of their engineers and found the higher the percentage of their college expenses they had made themselves, the more they were making now, which I thought was an interesting correlation. So you leave the chemicals to the chemists as far as I'm concerned and take them away from the athletes.
There you go, folks. That was Stanton Friedman from our very first interview here on Binnall of America Audio, the X-Conference sessions at the X-Conference 2 in Washington, D.C., April of 2005. Of course, you can find out more information on Stan Friedman at his website, www.stantonfriedman.com, STANTONFRIEDMAN.com. We're going to move right into the next clip from Lauren Coleman's appearance on Binnall of America Audio Season 1, discussing suicide clusters in Major League Baseball in the late 1980s. Lauren Coleman was on top of this story way ahead of anybody else and was trying to get the word out back then. He tells us all about it in this clip from our interview last February. It's the next segment here on the Binnall of America Audio Baseball Special.
When I decided it was 10 years ago, to retire from the university to really look at getting away from academia, I started consulting on the side in suicide prevention, and so that I could have at least some stable, even though my income literally is, zeroes out because my expenses are about there too.
Yeah.
At least that was a way to pay the mortgage and pay the oil bill here in Maine.
Yeah.
And then cryptozoology was on the side. And now it's flipped around so that I'm almost seeing full-time as a cryptozoologist, but I still am in that field of suicide prevention, so that, for instance, during I think it was the second week of January of 2006, you could pick up a Sports Illustrated, and there was a huge story about football suicide clusters. And I'm interviewed in that, and across 4 or 6 pages, there's quotes from The Copycat Effect in my books on suicide. And nobody reading that would know that I'm also a cryptozoologist. So sometimes the twain doesn't meet, but I'm very open these days talking about, I think there's a lot of overlap. You have media flaps in both of them.
Yeah.
They affect sightings. It affects the way kids are going to react, either saying they saw a Bigfoot, or unfortunately for the more vulnerable teens and older people around us, it's in terms of killing themselves. So there's a lot of understanding about interviewing, about manipulation of the media that occurs, that I really have taken from both fields to put in Copycat Effect or into my other work about cryptozoology.
Why don't you tell me a little bit about these football suicide clusters, because I've never really heard about this before until you really just mentioned it.
Well, in my book, The Copycat Effect, I do a whole chapter on baseball player suicides. In the 1980s, I was the first person to study the suicides that were occurring in Major League Baseball. And I had studied it so much that by the spring of 1989, I wrote every Major League manager, CEO, general manager, and also the commissioner of baseball, and said that we need to wake up. Statistically, we're going to have some suicides in this year, in 1989, and we need to get some funding. You need to really take a look at the fact that you're not doing anything to prepare some of these baseball players. As it turns out, that was the summer that Donnie Moore shot himself.
Oh, wow.
Donnie Moore was the Angels pitcher that gave up the final pitch that David Henderson turned into a home run, and the Angels didn't go to the World Series, and the Red Sox did that year, 1986. But he killed himself 3 years later after he'd gone to the minors, and I had studied and found out that baseball players had killed themselves within 3 years of when they retire from Major League Baseball or as an older man.
Oh, wow.
So that here we had Donnie Moore plus 3 other baseball players killed themselves that summer.
Oh.
So I was phenomenally right in my prediction. And baseball, I think it was the next year, got together the BOAA222A program, which is assistance to retired baseball players to try to, somebody falls on bad times or needs some therapy that will give her help.
There you go, folks. That was Lauren Coleman talking about suicide clusters in Major League Baseball. Of course, you can find out more information on Lauren Coleman at his fantastic website, cryptomundo.com, cryptomundo.com. Up next, segment number 3, the first of the fresh material. Adam Go Rightly. We got a hold of him right before he was leaving town for a little vacation and got him to tell us about the Doc Ellis LSD-infused no-hitter, the Dodgers and MK Ultra, and life as a Giants fan. Here now is segment 3 with Adam Go Rightly.
We've brought back former BOA audio guest Adam Go Rightly. We had him on last December, back December of 2005. It's been quite a while since we spoke to you. Welcome back to the show, of course.
Hey, thanks, Tim.
One of the stories I wanted to get to came up actually here when I was planning for the baseball special, and this was the story of Doc Ellis and his LSD-inspired, LSD-fueled, I guess, no-hitter that he pitched back in the 1970s or so. Could you share that story with the Binnall of America listeners?
Yes, it was on June 12th, 1970, that Doc Ellis, who at that time pitched for the Pittsburgh Pirates, he was kind of chilling in L.A. that day, thought he had a day off, and so decided to trip with a lady friend of his, and they dropped some acid around noon that day, and Doc was just starting to come onto it when his girlfriend noticed in the newspaper that he was scheduled to pitch that day. No. And so the game was in San Diego with a scheduled starting time around 6 p.m. So Doc had his girlfriend drive him to L.A. International, where he caught a flight to San Diego, and so by the time he made it to the mound that evening, he was blazing, as they say.
Yeah.
And the rest, as we say, whoever we are, is history.
And when did that come out, that he was tripping out on acid at the time?
Yeah, I first heard about it, I'm not sure when his autobiography, I remember hearing about it in the mid-'80s. I went, wow, that's wild. Nowadays, Doc is a drug counselor, it so happens.
And now I remember in your book also that you had a little section there on your own UFO LSD trip. So, I haven't done LSD, unfortunately. As someone who has, does it sound like reasonable that someone could pitch a no-hitter, which is incredibly hard, while on LSD, or does that sound like something that you like? Well, having done it, I actually kind of sounds pretty believable.
I think it's reasonable. It's all about, you couldn't take it every time and duplicate that. Every time is, every trip is different, but sometimes under hallucinogens, you hit a groove where everything is just fallen in place perfectly. So that might have been what happened to Doc. If the story is on the level, I don't doubt it, although, looking at the game itself, his control wasn't the best. He beamed 2 batters that day and walked something like 8 or 9.
Oh, wow.
So, but nobody was able to hit him either, so yeah, part of it might have been just that wildness after he hit a couple guys. It spooked him, and that might have attributed to helping him pitch the no-hitter as well.
Nice, yeah. Now, what's that?
He said nice.
Now, I know you're up in the San Francisco area. Are you still a big baseball fan up there now? I remember Bishop was kind of busting your chops via email to me about it, so I didn't know if you were still a fan. Yeah.
Of course, the greatness that is the San Francisco Giants.
Now, what do you think of
Holiness Barry Bonds?
That's what I was going to ask you about. Are you what side are you on in the big Barry Bonds thing? I understand, like the locals are more pro Barry.
He's a great man.
So you're looking forward to
as long as he's hitting home runs.
There you go.
Hopefully, I'm tired of Barry like everybody else. He's a he's a punk, and but when he starts hitting those home runs and the Giants win, everything's good. Hopefully this year he'll break the record. The Giants will go to the World Series and win. He'll retire, and they can start on a new path. And right now, the preseason, how people are rating the Giants seems to be a bit underrated. I think I read one that said they're predicting them to place fourth in that the Western Division there, which I think the Giants will have a good season. Their bullpen's a little questionable, but they got a lot of good young pitching, and then as far as offense, they've got a lot of older veterans. So if they can stay healthy, it might be a good season for them.
Yeah. And so what have you been up to since we talked to you last on the program? I know you have launched a radio program of your own and all kinds of good stuff. So give us a little update on what you've been up to.
Yeah, the web radio show is Untamed Dimensions, which you can check out at www.blogtalkradio.com/GoRightly. And in fact, just last night on the show, I interviewed Greg Bishop about a number of things, one of them being the Tommy Lasorda LA Dodgers MK Ultra mind control conspiracy.
Really?
Yeah, of course.
I'll have to ask him about that.
Yeah, Greg was evasive about this whole issue, so I think on some level he's involved.
Oh, no. How did this come up? Did you hear about it, or is this something that he's talked about?
I uncovered this, and it's talked about in the book by Kathy O'Brien, the name that escapes me now. She's an alleged MK Ultra survivor, and she claims that Tommy Lasorda, as well as other people in professional sports, were involved in this MK Ultra shenanigans. This is in the mid-'80s and during the period when they won the World Series, and basically manipulating and mind controlling the players, and it was all tied in with gambling and rigging games and this type of thing.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. That's really strange.
And, I pointed out to Greg, wearing an LA Dodgers cap is akin to, wearing a sign around your neck that says, I like MK Ultra.
Yeah, kind of like those Freemason bumper emblems.
Exactly.
So aside from Untamed Dimensions, what else you got going on? You got a blog thing going now, too, don't you?
Just got the blog going. It's gorightly.wordpress.com, and that's to just keep folks updated what I have going on, what upcoming episodes of Untamed Dimensions and other appearances I'll be making. I'm kind of hitting the UFO circuit here shortly. There's a number of events coming up. One I want to publicize is Retro UFO Part 2.
Yeah.
In Landers, California, again at the Integratron this year. In fact, I just interviewed some folks on Untamed Dimensions about this upcoming event, and it's basically partly a fundraiser for the Integratron.
What's the Integratron?
Back in the that area, Landers, California, where the Integratron and also Giant Rock is at, some of the very early UFO sightings and encounters occurred there, and a lot of people gathered back during the day. George Adamski, George Hunt Williamson, a number of folks, and in particular George Van Tassel.
Mm-hmm.
And out in the area, Giant Rock was a landing strip, and it became a real primitive airport at that time, the Giant Rock Airstrip. And this guy Van Tassel moved out there. He'd worked for Hughes Aircraft, but he got fed up with the rat race, moved out there, and started having communications with the Space Brothers. In time, this led to these, what they called the Giant Rock spacecraft conventions. during the heyday of this event, they'd get anywhere. The numbers vary, but anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000 people. So these were huge events that went on through the 50s into the mid-70s when they finally ended, and all the major players of that day, as I mentioned, Adamski and all these other fellows came out there. And so Retro UFO, the event is, you asked what the Integratron was. Van Tassel received these communications from the Space Brothers, instructing him to build this thing called the Integratron, which was a type of rejuvenation machine, what it would be ultimately, and it was housed inside this dome-like structure that looks like kind of a strange-looking observatory, and inside of it would be the actual equipment. The actual equipment is not there. Whether he ever finished that phase of the project, we'll never know, but the Integratron itself still exists, and as I said, part of the event is to raise funds for the upkeep of the Integratron. You can go to www.integratron.com to check it out, and also as a fundraiser for the Morongo Valley Historical Society. So it's a cool event. They're going to have some of the old-timers there, Dr. Frank Stranges and Reverend Bob Short. These are famous names in the early contactee scene, and I'll be there. I may be speaking. I think Greg Bishop is going to come out. He may be speaking as well.
Awesome. And I saw you write up in Paranoia Magazine about it last year, the first edition. So awesome. Anything else going on? You said you're doing, is that the other conferences too, or is that just the...
Yeah, there's some other stuff going on. I'm going to cover the Conspiracy Con for Paranoia Magazine.
Awesome.
May... sometime mid-May. Then the Biggie in July 5th through the 8th or 9th.
It's got to be Roswell.
You got it. So I'll be there speaking at that event with Nick Redfern and Greg Bishop and a lot of the other leading folks. Richard Dolan and a number of others will be at that event. It's going to be a huge deal. There's a number of other events going on concurrent, just with the regular UFO speakers.
Oh, I'm sure it's going to be a wild place down there in Roswell, I bet.
And so, that's what's going on with me.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks for taking some time here to talk to us and all that good stuff, and hopefully some of the Binnall of America audio listeners will tune into Untamed Dimensions Radio and get some additional fix for esoteric radio from Adam Gorightly.
Exactly.
Thanks for coming back.
Thanks, Tim.
There you go, folks. That was the BOA audio return of Adam Gorightly. And, of course, you can find out more information on Adam Gorightly at his blog, www.gorightly.wordpress.com, GORIGHTLY.wordpress.com. Up next, it's internet pundit Paul Kimball making his BOA audio return. Paul's going to be talking about ufology and the potential for a Red Sox moment. We're going to dig all into that, plus Paul's gripes with modern baseball, and of course, tons and tons more. This is quite a lengthy update from the man behind the other side of truth. So, let's just roll right into it. Paul Kimball making his BOA audio return on the Binnall of America Audio Baseball Special.
Continuing onward here, folks, with our Binnall of America Audio Baseball Special, I want to welcome back to the program Paul Kimball of the infamous blog The Other Side of Truth, redstarfilms.blogspot.com. Earlier in the season, he was on the program, and we brought him back here to talk about some of his observations with baseball and ufology, particularly this post he has at his blog called UFOs and the Red Sox Moment, something I wanted to ask him about in our original interview, but I just didn't have time in the 3 hours, so I knew he'd be perfect to bring back here for the UFOs and the Red Sox Moment discussion of baseball and a little lighthearted talk here with Paul Kimball. So welcome back to the show, Paul.
Howdy, Tim. Good to be back on Binnall of America.
Awesome. This UFOs and the Red Sox moment, I'm obviously a Red Sox fan from Boston and all that good stuff, and I really liked how you tied in ufology to this Red Sox moment, and sort of the gist of it is that, like Red Sox fans, if those of us in ufology will stick it out long enough, eventually we'll win the proverbial World Series of ufology, which I guess would be an answer to the UFO conundrum. But maybe you can flesh out what you're trying to say here with this UFOs and the Red Sox moment discussion.
Well, actually, you pretty much just covered it, so let's move on. No, the general idea, I mean, I'm a Red Sox fan, too. I grew up because I live in Nova Scotia. In the old days, NBC, the affiliate was out of Bangor. So we got WLBZ TV from Bangor, and, of course, they broadcast, I think it was Nissan Bread or something, whatever, the Red Sox games. So instead of growing up watching the Montreal Expos or the Toronto Blue Jays, as you would think for a Canadian, I grew up watching the Boston Red Sox, as most Maritimers did here in Canada. Yeah, and that was basically the point of the post, which I think I wrote 2 years ago. It was relatively soon after the Red Sox had finally, for we long Red Sox suffering fans like you and I, and pretty much everybody in New England and everybody in Atlantic Canada who grew up watching the Red Sox, you finally have that moment where you get it. There it is. You've won the World Series. And I always meant to write a follow-up to that column, which I'll get to in a second. But the idea was ufology, at least the ones that are looking for the extraterrestrial hypothesis to be proven to be true. And it was really directed at those folks. There are a wide group of us out here who just look at the UFO phenomenon as a mystery that probably will never be solved in our lifetime, the Phil Klass curse. But it might be. But we don't live and breathe UFOs, and if it's not solved, then our lives are somehow unfulfilled. But there are people like Stan Friedman and Dick Hall who have spent a very long time and a significant portion of their lives invested in studying and researching, and in Stan's case, lecturing about the UFO phenomenon and writing about it. Jerry Clark's another one. There's you can name them all.
Yeah.
There's a very large group of them. And to me, they're like Red Sox fans were before the Red Sox won the World Series, where you're constantly, like every time something like the O'Hare UFO incident comes up, you see, it's almost like, wow, ufology just got in the playoffs. And
yeah.
You think, maybe this is the year we win the World Series. This is the case that will break it. Roswell was the case. Rendlesham was the case. Kenneth Arnold was the case, whatever. And that it never happens. Sometimes you even get tantalizingly close, at least as far as they're concerned. So Roswell, maybe in Stan's case, he actually thinks they won the World Series in Roswell, but I have news for him. They didn't win. It's, if anything, they lost or maybe drew. But there's never been that defining moment for the true hardcore UFO buff, enthusiast, researcher, whatever word you want to use, proponent, where they can say, aha, it is this. We have our answer. Mm-hmm. So they're afflicted. In baseball, for the Red Sox fans, it was the Bambino's curse. You deal Babe Ruth and you're never going to win the World Series. In ufology, it's Phil Klass's sort of famous curse. I curse you that you shall be on your deathbed and not know the answer to the UFO mystery. And it turns out Klass has been pretty much right up until now. But the point of the Red Sox moment is eventually all mysteries get solved. Eventually, even with long-suffering Red Sox fans, you win a World Series. Things just break your way.
So that's what the Red Sox UFOs, ufology and the Red Sox moment was about. My hope that there is a Red Sox moment, not so much because I need to know the answer to the UFO phenomenon. That would be nice, I guess. But, it would be nice to see guys like Stan Friedman and Dick Hall before they shuffle off this mortal coil. And they're not getting any younger. Both Stan and Dick are in their 70s now. Guys like Jerry Clark, I think, in their late 50s or early 60s. So they really probably only have between maybe 10 and 20 or 30 years left, which isn't a lot of time in the universal bucket of time. It'd be nice to see them maybe get some answers. If not the answer to what the UFO phenomenon is, then at least maybe something from the government, Stephen Greer's disclosure kind of thing,
yeah.
or something that indicates that they've been on the right track. But the thing is, and here's the other column that I was going to write after that, well, what happens if you win? Every Red Sox fan I know of somehow now feels less special because the Sox won. There was something to be said for this long-suffering club that we all had. You could tell a Red Sox fan. You'd see them walk down the street. They'd have a cap on. You'd have a cap on. You'd have a moment, even if you didn't know them. You could be in Albuquerque in an airport or anywhere, and you go, "Hey, you're a Sox fan. Yeah, you think they're going to win this year? Nah, I don't know. Got a good team." And once you win the World Series, though, you know what you are? You're just another baseball team.
Yeah.
I mean, I still love the Sox, but you don't have that story anymore. Now it's the Cubs are that team. What happens to all these ufologists? What would they do if all of a sudden, I don't know, President Bush or somebody wandered out and said, "Hey, you know what? You got us. Mea culpa. We've been lying to you for 60 years. There are 50 alien races here. We've established diplomatic relations, and I'd now like to introduce you to Ambassador Nigdar of the planet Vogon, and say a few words." Well, what do ufologists do? All of a sudden, you win, and it's like, wow. And I can tell you, from a Red Sox fan perspective, it was great for about 5 minutes, and then it kind of sunk into me that, hey, that's something I don't have anymore. That we've been suffering for 80, 85 or whatever, however many years, or in my case, all 38 at the time of my life. So, I don't know, there's a downside to solving a mystery. There's a downside to winning that championship, which is maybe you're not quite as special as you were anymore. And the other thing with the UFO guys is, if that ever happens, somebody comes out and says, yes, it's aliens or extra dimensionals and we've known it, well, then everybody and their dog is going to want to get in on it, of course, the entire planet. And then the sort of UFO clique will have about 10 minutes to say, I told you so. And then nobody will care about them. They'll just be, other citizens. And this idea that they'll be experts that will be consulted upon by the media and everything. No, the experts will go find philosophers and theologians and physicists and astronomers. Those are the people that they're going to be talking about, all of whom will have to say, hey, maybe we were wrong, but now let's move forward. They're not going to go talk to Jerry Clark and Stan Friedman and Dick Hall or me or you. So at that point, your special little club is basically down to an I told you so, and let's go find something else to do because, our moment came and went, and it was great and glorious, but only for about 5 minutes. So the upshot of all that, Tim, is there are moments when, as a Red Sox fan, I almost wish they hadn't won the series. And if you have listeners in Boston who are listening right now, I might have to be careful the next time I get off a plane at Logan, but or switch planes in Logan. But it's just like a little part. I'm glad they won.
Yeah.
But there's a little part of me that sort of misses being able to say to my brother, who's a damn Yankees fan, he'd always go, well, we got 26 World Series or whatever. And I'd go, yeah, but I got 86, Buckner. Like, how many of those World Series wins do you remember? None. They all bleed into one. I can tell you, I can remember every single painstaking loss, in the Red Sox history, at least when I was alive. And I know other people who can remember 67 like it's yesterday.
Yeah.
And when you talk to Red Sox fans, I find most of us still talk about the losses, not the win. We still go back and talk about Bill Buckner and Bucky Dent. And not so many of us talk about beating the Cardinals in 4. Now, beating the Yankees was great, but that wasn't winning the World Series. That was just kicking the Yankees' ass, and that was fun, especially the way it happened. Now, that was great, but that wasn't the Red Sox moment of winning the World Series. When we actually won the World Series, like, you beat the Cardinals in 4? I don't know. I was left underwhelmed. So I have a feeling that ufology, if their Red Sox moment ever comes, might be left underwhelmed. I don't know.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it all pans out. But you're confident that it will happen, I guess, is the.
I'm less confident now than when I wrote the thing 2 years ago.
I was going to ask you that as a follow-up, because I have it on my little laptop here, and it was March 17th, 2005, right? Almost right before the beginning of the follow-up season as the defending champion. So I'm sure you were basking in the afterglow of sorts. So I'm wondering if in the 2 seasons since, especially last year where they didn't even make the playoffs, are your thoughts on the potential for a UFO Red Sox moment sort of lessened at this point, just by the nature of it all?
Yeah, I was still feeling pretty, and I had said, I was in the debate I was having at the time with the exopoliticians and stuff, and Michael Salla, and, it was, a lot of what I was writing was fairly negative about the wackos in ufology. And I thought, well, I'll write something positive. Just so I'm not known as this curmudgeonly guy who is always negative. So there were that, and the Galactic Barrows boys. There are some sort of cute positive columns from back in around March and April of 2005. But trying to make a serious point, and I got to admit, 2 years later, no, I don't think there's a Red Sox moment coming for definitely for ufology. I think ufology is a lost cause. But for people who are interested in finding the answer to the UFO mystery, which I think is something different than ufology, I don't see it coming. It's been a mystery for hundreds and thousands of years, not just since 1947. So, is it all of a sudden going to solve itself tomorrow, or are we going to solve it? I don't see that happening. Certainly not the current group of investigators and researchers that are out there. If it is to be solved, Tim, and I think I've heard you say this, but many people say this, if it is to be answered, it will be on the terms of the phenomenon. Assuming the phenomenon's paranormal, i.e. aliens, extra-dimensionals, time travelers, it will be on their terms, not ours, meaning they will reveal themselves to us. We will not find them. And I think that's probably true today, and it'll probably be true in 50 years or 100 years. If there are beings out there, it'll be their call, not our call, as to whether they reveal themselves to us. And if it's not paranormal beings or something like that, then it's more mundane stuff. Then it will happen on a case-by-case basis where we can explain away case by case, no, this isn't, no, this isn't, no, this isn't. But that will never, you'll always have a residue of cases that remain unexplained. Even as you explain one, you'll have a new one come along that's unexplained. So the phenomenon, even if it was a mundane sort of thing, will continue on ad infinitum, because you'll never be able to explain every case to everyone's satisfaction all at the same time. So yeah, the only way you're going to get a Red Sox moment, ironically, you could look at the Red Sox and say, well, did they beat the Yankees, or did the Yankees collapse spectacularly? Was it really a Red Sox win, or was it just a colossal Yankee collapse?
Yeah.
A bit of both. I think you're going to have to see the equivalent of a real Yankee collapse, i.e. the aliens do something, as opposed to us being able to figure it out. I just don't see that happening.
You think Michio Kaku is our Daisuke Matsuzaka?
What? I don't know if he's getting $800 billion or whatever. If Kari Yastrzemski was dead, he'd be turning over in his grave somewhere. I don't know about Kaku. Kaku seems to have, he did his thing during the Peter Jennings special, which I thought was great. He did his little quote, keep an open mind and everything. But he doesn't talk about UFOs. It's not something that really seems to interest him. So because it was Jennings and ABC, I think Kaku said, look, if I appear and sound rational, I won't get tired with the UFO wingnut thing, but I will be on a much bigger stage than I might otherwise normally be on. It's good PR. It's good for business, selling books and stuff. And I think that's probably why he did it. But he doesn't seem to have any abiding passion in the UFO phenomenon, really. So, there it is.
And to sort of move into just general baseball talk now for the baseball junkies who are tuning into the episode, what are your thoughts on the Red Sox for this year? Hopeful or cautiously optimistic, perhaps? That's probably where I'd lie, I guess.
Look, the truth is the Red Sox should be at least in the playoffs every year. So should the Yankees. With the kind of money those guys have and the budgets they have, you should fire any general manager if they can't get those teams into the playoffs, and probably the manager too. Now, assuming that there's not a huge raft of injuries or something like that, because there's always going to be maybe bad things happen to good people. But by and large, the Red Sox and the Yankees should be in the playoffs every year. I mean, who can compete with them in the East? Baltimore?
Yeah.
Toronto's actually probably got a pretty good team this year, but their pitching is weak. The Red Sox and the Yankees have the resources to be able, if they're smart, to put a quality team out, 1 through 9 in the batting order, good reserves on the bench, a decent pitching staff, and good relievers every year. And so there's no reason why they shouldn't be continually in the playoffs, at least 7 or 8 years out of 10. And as it turns out, in the Yankees' case, that's what they've been doing. The Red Sox less so, but still they're there in the hunt every year, it seems. So I think the days of the Yankees when they were just horrible in the 70s, or the Red Sox when they were losing year after year, those days are probably gone, and they're probably gone for good, given the new economics in baseball. And the markets that those two teams are in. So, I'd be cautiously optimistic about the Red Sox this year if I cared. But I got to admit,
I follow baseball in general, and I still love the Sox in theory. I wear a hat and all that sort of stuff. But, my Red Sox were Dewey Evans, Butch Hobson, Rick Burleson, Carl Yastrzemski, Freddie Lynn, Jim Rice. Those guys. Those are the guys when I grew up with. Those were the guys I watched play. And I still, that's my Red Sox team. I've become sort of an old man now, I guess. I kind of look back in the past and the lovable losers, those great players. And the new guys, because of the new economics of baseball, now I'm going to sound like Bob Costas. So the new economics of baseball and the interleague play, first of all, I think interleague play has been bad because it's taken some of the sort of American League, National League rivalry out of it that you'd only see them meet in the World Series. So frankly, to me, the World Series kind of comes across as just a 7-game set between teams that have probably already played. And, you just don't have the team loyalty anymore. You don't find a guy like Cal Yastrzemski or Carl Ripken. Cal Ripken Jr. or Carl Yastrzemski for the Red Sox, or for the most part, Dwight Evans, who played almost all his career before he played a season or two in Baltimore. These kind of guys staying with the team for their entire career, where you could develop that sense of fan loyalty. Jim Rice is another good example. Instead, you see guys who hired guns like Alex Rodriguez who fire into New York for 7 years or whatever on a $200 billion contract. I mean, what's the love, really?
Yeah.
And so I can't name more than 3 players on the current Red Sox roster.
Oh, wow.
When I was a kid, because to me they're all interchangeable. Who's the icon on the Red Sox? Like who's, David Ortiz. Maybe he's that one. But with David Ortiz, if somebody offered him a wad more cash, go somewhere else, probably. Yastrzemski had his troubles with ownership over the years, but he always stuck around. And that's why he's always been and always will be my favorite baseball player. Cal Ripken, a close second. Alan Trammell, a distant third. But those kind of guys who played their entire career with one team. You could build that loyalty, and it's just not there anymore, Tim.
Yeah.
As a result, I think fans in all sports, it's true in hockey, it's true in football, it's true in basketball, the numbers might be up in terms of people watching, but the fun of it seems to be gone. It really does come across as more of a business now, and these guys as more businessmen than, Cal Ripken or Carl Yastrzemski. And maybe I'm romanticizing the past, but I don't think so. I think there was a sort of a more innocent era. And of all the sports, because baseball is so deeply rooted in the American soul and psyche, just the same way hockey is in Canada, I think that's a shame because baseball is truly a special sport. Football and basketball might draw more in the U.S., but baseball, they'll never have the same cachet in terms of Americana that baseball has. Yeah. And to turn baseball, and I think this was Costas' point when he would go off on his rants against interleague play and even the DH, which I don't like either. There's just something pristine about baseball, and you don't want to sound like an old fogey. Sure, things can change. Add more teams to the playoffs. I have no problem with that. But at some point, you shouldn't be just like any other professional sports league. There should be something special about baseball. I think there is, but I think they've done a pretty good job of ruining it over the last 10 or 15 years. Losing a World Series wasn't helpful. That was not a good thing either. So.
And what about all this steroids in baseball? They didn't have all these problems when you were getting into it and everything and growing up. So what are you as disgusted as you seem like a purist? So you must be kind of annoyed by the whole thing. But you sort of just like, well, this is par for the course. I saw steroids ruin wrestling, and now it's happening to baseball or something like that.
Okay, you just compared pro wrestling, which I love, but to baseball, which is to me almost a religion. It's like being a lapsed Catholic. I'm still Catholic in name, although I'm not Catholic, but say a lapsed Protestant. But I just don't go to church anymore, But I still love I still hope that the church reforms and I can go back to baseball. Steroids was horrible, but who do you blame? Here's who you blame, not necessarily in this order. You blame the owners, because they were complicit in it. So to hear any owner stand up and say, we didn't know what was going on, lies. You're lying. You knew exactly what was happening. You encouraged it. Do you blame the players? Yes. Certainly guys like Palmero who go before Congress and lie. I mean, that's just – and Mark McGuire should never be in the Hall of Fame. Mark McGuire should never be in the Hall of Fame, as far as I'm concerned, until he answers the question, did he use steroids? And then once he says yes, and I think we all know what the answer to that is, fine, put him in the Hall of Fame. But, you know, he sat there and took the fifth and wouldn't answer questions. I think, you know, you've got a duty to answer those questions. And if you don't, you sort of wander off into Pete Roseland as this kind of figure that baseball maybe someday would like to welcome back, but you got to come clean before you can do it. But at the end of the day, who do you really blame? You blame the fans, because they were the ones who went home run crazy. You know, and the owners and the players basically were giving the fans what they wanted. And it's that quick fix mentality that we've seen in society over the last 20, 25 years, where it's just not enough. Baseball is meant to be a slow game. I was having a discussion with somebody the other day about what the best sport was. And he was British, and he was going on about soccer. And I said, well, soccer is pretty good, or football, as they would call it. But like any other major sport, it has a time. You know, you got 90 minutes to play plus overtime if you're tied. But there is a structure to soccer. There's a structure to football, hockey, 3 periods, 4 quarters, whatever. Baseball, yes, they have 9 innings, but there's no time limit on the innings. You literally could have a 2-minute-long inning if you got Clemens pitching in his prime, or you could have a half-hour-long inning if you had Clemens pitching now. So, you know, that's the wonder of baseball, is it's almost like a timeless game, not literally in terms of how long it's been around, but each game, it's like they're snowflakes. Every game is different.
Yeah.
Time-wise, the feel, the flow. And the only place I find that now is minor league baseball. I caught a game when I was out in Albuquerque with my brother a couple of years ago after we went to the Aztec UFO Symposium. We stuck around for a while, toured New Mexico and then Texas, visited Nick Redfern. And we went to a game of the Albuquerque Isotopes, wonderful baseball stadium, sort of a AAA team in Albuquerque. And that was baseball to me. Sitting in the park, just hearing the hot dog vendors, seeing guys who were, you know, not getting paid $1 billion. Maybe they would someday, but guys going up, guys coming down, guys who know they're never going to make the show, but they play for the love of the game. All of those guys were there. And the fans were into it, and I thought, this is what baseball should be, and it's probably what baseball is never going to be again, at least at the professional, the major league level. So, you know, yeah, for your listeners who are listening, I'm a cockeyed optimist. No, that's not right. I'm a romanticist. There you go.
There you go.
It's like liking Lord Byron's poetry. You know, nobody now knows who Lord Byron is, basically, but it's great romantic stuff to quote women. Well, I'm romantic about baseball, too. The way Costas is, that's why I like Bob Costas. And, you know, that kind of romanticism just doesn't exist anymore, or at least not very much in our sort of national psyche.
Yeah.
Now, listen, you're about to cry. I can just hear in your voice, yeah.
Yeah,
dude,
well,
that's heavy.
Yeah, it is heavy.
You know, okay, well, I'll ask you. Who do you think is going to win the series this year? Who would you predict?
You know, it's hard. I would want the Red Sox to win, so you have to, you know, kind of ideally them. But if not the Red Sox, I guess that would be, you start the answer with, if not the Red Sox, I could see maybe the Cubs seem kind of like they have something going on. They seem a little rejuvenated with Lou Piniella and some of these new guys they got. And it sounds like there's an attitude change there that might really help them out a lot. Although they kind of are starting to remind me a little bit of Detroit was last year. Detroit looks like if they could get their stuff together here, I think I wouldn't be surprised to see it come out of the American League Central. The Red Sox are always sort of troublesome, and Cleveland sounds like they're trying to get their act together. And
don't count out the Twins either.
Yeah, I forgot about the Twins.
It's a strong division all the way through, except maybe Kansas City. But you know, Kansas City has a slew of good young players. So
so they seem like the kind of team that could all of a sudden you'll be like, where the hell? Like last year's Detroit team just came out of nowhere. So I think the American League Central seems really strong. Yeah, I forgot all about the Twins, but definitely them. So, you know, and then of course you got the Red Sox and the Yankees, so it's a really a crapshoot. It's interesting. I find it hard to really predict, because the season is so long.
Yeah.
That it's hard to even to know, but no one really in the National League impresses me too much other than the Cubs really. I don't know, the Cardinals they seem like they're the same team as last year, but that team didn't impress me much anyway.
Yeah, no, they backdoored their way in, but once they get in, they played well.
Yeah.
I got here's my last baseball comment. Then I'll go on the record. This is my Sean David Morton Sylvia Brown moment here.
Oh no.
The Miners are alive. No, wait, no, they're not. They're dead. Yeah, sorry. That was my favorite coast-to-coast moment from last year. You watch somebody's career go down in flames in sort of a 20-minute period of time. I think the Tigers are going to the World Series, and I think they're going to win. I think this is their year. That their pitching is so. I watched them pitch last year, like when I'd sit down and watch them.
Yeah.
They're so young. Their arms are so strong. They're like the Cubs without all the injuries.
Yeah.
Because you got Pryor and Wood, and those guys have problems. But you don't see that on the Tigers. They're not burned out. They've been used well. Leland knows how to use a pitching staff. So, yeah, I'm going with the Tigers, and they're going to mop the floor with whoever the National League sends their way, because there isn't much going on in the NL, I'm afraid.
Yeah. All right,
so,
well,
there you go.
We'll keep that in mind and have to call you on it when the World Series comes around.
Either them or the Florida Marlins. Maybe it's that. Is it 5 years yet? Don't the Marlins win a World Series every 5 years?
It could be.
And then implode. So
yeah,
they get a good team too, good young team. So, but the Tigers, I'm picking the Tigers.
All right.
Yeah.
So what have you been up to since we talked to you in September? Since we had you on the show for the big double episode and everything, everyone was raving about it at the time. So I'm sure people will be excited to hear what you've been up to since. I know you had the UFO big evidence case there is specials coming up. So let's talk about that and what else is coming up for you, all your various side projects and stuff.
Sure. Best Evidence Top 10 UFO Documentaries, I've been saying this for a year, is almost done. But we are literally in the studio later tonight with Chris McBride and our recording guys doing voiceover work. The picture lock is almost done. So the film is set for broadcast in Canada on May 10th, 2007 on Space, the Imagination Station. It will then air on Television New Zealand because we've already sold it there. And our distributor is B7 Media in the United Kingdom, and you can go to www.b as in Buffalo, 7 as in the number, media.com, b7media.com. Those are our distributors. Nice little thing, they actually own the rights to the Blake 7 franchise, the sort of classic science fiction series. So they're trying to do a Battlestar Galactica kind of thing where you resurrect the series 20 or 30 years later. So, yeah, they're great guys to work with. They've been very proactive. I'm pretty confident this is going to be the film that really breaks it for my company in that it will sell in a lot of different countries. Yeah. And then the hope would be that if it sells and does well, people will go back and look at the back catalog and start acquiring Stanton T. Friedman is Real, for instance.
Yes.
And get that on television in different countries. Because when you're making films, it's very hard. You move to the next one. And distribution, unless you're a company big enough to have your own distribution wing, usually gets lost in the shuffle.
Yeah.
But we're finally starting to get distribution in different ways for different projects. So B7's looking after Best Evidence. Tim Crawford's UFO TV as Do You Believe in Magic? They're selling that on DVD, a 2-box set with lots of goodies and extras. And he's also picked up Fields of Fear, which we did last year about Canadian cattle mute investigator Fern Belzile. So that should be hitting the DVD market sometime in the next 2 or 3 months once I get a chance to put the extras in, and it'll be a 2-DVD package as well with Crawford's UFO TV. What else? Then after Best Evidence, I go off, I do a documentary on classical music for Bravo here in Canada. And then after that, sometime around June, I will begin writing and directing, although not producing, it's not my company that's doing it, a television series on the paranormal, and that's all I can say about it right now for a major network.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Sounds exciting. Now, you say that's the hard date it's going to air in Canada on May 10th?
Yeah.
Now, what about people in America? Are they shit out of luck, or can they...
You're screwed, you American bastards. Freeze in the dark.
Is there going to be any DVD distribution on this, or are they going to have to wait for it to get picked up by, like, an American station or something?
Well, hopefully it'll get picked up by an American station. If you're in the border states, you can probably see the Space Channel. Probably beams in via cable or something. But we will be striking a DVD deal with a sub-distributor. I leave that to B7 to negotiate. It's like talking to Data or something on Star Wars or Star Trek, B7 or B4, whatever.
Yeah.
But I'll leave that to our distributor to negotiate. And then, they will be out on DVD before, I would say, September of 2007. So before the fall, we'll have it out on DVD.
Awesome.
Yeah, so definitely be out there, and it's shaping up, I think, as a kick-ass film. You know, there's Dick Hall, who is almost never in UFO films, Stan Friedman, Nick Pope, Brad Sparks, Bruce Maccabee. You know, the who's who of ufology is in this film.
And you have not revealed the actual top 10 yet, correct? Or the order or so?
No,
or something,
definitely
right?
not the order, and I've revealed, if people have read my blog, listened to radio interviews I've done, or met me in a bar, at some point or another, I've revealed all 10 cases, but it would be like trying to figure out where the Simpsons live.
Yeah.
You'd have to go through every episode of The Simpsons and figure out the 49 states that they've mentioned they don't live in. So it would take a graduate-level project for 4 students at MIT or something to figure out what the top 10 were. But yeah, you know, it's no doubt, I've made no bones about it. The RB-47 case is on the list. McMinnville is on the list. Rendlesham is on the list. And then so those are fairly well-known cases. And then there are Shag Harbor. I just finished doing Shag Harbor today. And then there are some cases that most people, even within ufology, either have never heard of or aren't terribly familiar with. And it's going to be nice to see those cases get the attention, even in 4, 5, 6-minute segments, that they're really due. And hopefully it will sort of send people out and go, hey, let's go look into these things, these cases a little more closely.
Yeah. And we'll have to maybe we can do like a special episode or something to coincide with the Canadian premiere, so we can hook up the American audience with a little insight into what the special's all about.
Now, see, Tim, that is why Tim Binnall is at the cutting edge of the multimedia empire that is Binnall of America and the new media and everything. See, absolutely, you can. In fact, you could call me and interview me from my home. Because I always like to watch my films on television. They always look different on TV, sound compression and stuff like that. We used to say in the music industry, if you'd recorded an album, the thing you'd want to do, and this was the 90s, you'd put it on cassette and then go listen to it in your car stereo. Because if it sounded good in a car stereo, it would sound good anywhere.
Yeah.
And so the same thing, I usually watch it on a crappy TV. So if you call me while I'm watching it, you'll hear something along the lines of, son of a gun, like that. Who's mixing this crap up there? Something like that. They cut it. They cut case number 4.
Oh, no.
Whatever. No, they won't do stuff like that. But I usually wind up yelling at the TV. So maybe that'd be great. I'd love to do it and go down all 10 cases for your American listeners in particular, and maybe sort of talk about this. And I can send you clips, send you audio clips from some of the interviews that we're using in the film,
and find out the process by which you determined this top 10.
Yeah, that was kind of fun too.
Yeah,
actually.
So we'll talk about that, and we'll do a special episode in May about it, and we'll work it out off the air here, and we'll roll it out for the BOA audio listeners down the line in about 6 weeks or so.
Love the BOA audience.
Nice. All right. Well, hey, thanks for joining us here for the baseball special. I appreciate it a ton, and hopefully the UFO fans got a nice fix here on UFO discussion, and then also the baseball fans got some interesting baseball discussion. A little lighthearted episode, but definitely worth trying out. A little experimental thing here.
No, it's great. And I would only say that people think I don't agree with Stan Friedman on anything. We both agree on our love for baseball. Although Stan's a Dodgers fan, so, there's no accounting for taste. But at least he likes baseball, so that's a good thing.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. And, of course, the blog is redstarfilms.blogspot.com. That's where you can get your Paul Kimball fix, all you Kimball heads out there. Check it out. And that's it. Hey, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Tim.
There you go. That was Paul Kimball making his BOA audio return. You can find out more information on Paul Kimball at his blog, redstarfilms.blogspot.com. redstarfilms.blogspot.com. Up next,